Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is exploit, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Abdi. Abdi, thank you so much for this suggestion. Now let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb exploit used can mean to make full use of and derive the benefit from a resource. So many times this is used in connection to various natural resources. Could be utilizing various minerals or other things that can be used in producing or making and manufacturing various things. A second way to use the verb exploit can mean to use a situation or a person in an unfair or selfish way. So with this second definition, our verb takes on a pretty negative meaning. So it many times implies what's being said here. We are using someone or something else where we get all the benefit, and they may get no benefit, or they may be put in a worse off position. A third way the verb exploit gets used is connected to that second way, but it's to benefit unfairly from the work of another person. And that might mean that someone is being overworked and or they are being underpaid. So again, the second and third definitions have a pretty negative meaning to them. For now, you should know that exploit is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms exploiting. The past tense and the participle form of this verb can be made by adding ed. The base verb, exploit, ends in a T sound. This means when I add the ed ending, I'm going to make an id sound. So I'm going to add an extra syllable to this verb when I say it. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this: exploited, exploited. Hope you can hear that id sound there. Now, you might be happy to know there are no additional phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can move on to a little verb tense practice and see some real examples of this verb exploit. Today, we're going to review the present progressive and the present perfect progressive. Quick note. The words progressive and continuous are interchangeable. They mean exactly the same thing. So you're going to notice me using the double or triple P's as a bit of a reminder to my students. So let's start with the present progressive. Here we're going to be focused on an action that is happening now or an action that is in progress during a time period that has not yet been completed. The reason I say present progressive with my students is the two P's can help you remember that you need two parts to make your verb. We're going to be using a present form of be and the ing form of the verb. Now, we have three forms of be in the present tense, so we must pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, we're going to use am and then the ing form of the verb. If our subject is you, we, or they, we'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. And finally, if our subject is he, she, or it, we're going to use is, and then that ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at a sentence. The company is exploiting its workers, right? So maybe some kind of labor leader is making a statement like this, suggesting that they are being overworked and or undercompensated. Now, if you want to make a negative present progressive sentence, again, we'll start with our subject, pay attention to it because we need the form of be that matches, so am, is, or are. Then we'll use not, and then the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. People aren't exploiting exemption loopholes. I saw a sentence very similar to this. someone specifically talking about exemptions for certain vaccines or vaccinations, particularly as they relate to children in schools. And here, this particular official was suggesting that through their investigation and review of these exemption requests, that no one was taking unfair advantage of them. That's what that sentence is suggesting. Finally, let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, we're going to start with our form of be. Whatever form matches the subject, that subject comes next. Then we use the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Is the president exploiting the murder to squash dissent? If you watched my video earlier this week on the verb censor, you might know that I been speaking about some of the various matters going on in the United States. This is a question many people are asking and wondering about in the weeks that have followed since the murder of a very famous political commentator and leader of an organization that supports the president. Now let's move on and talk about the present perfect progressive. Many times students will say, I just don't understand what's really different about this. Many times when someone chooses to use the present perfect progressive, they're really trying to stress to their readers or their listeners that we have an action that started in the past, it's continuing in the present, and may even be continuing into the future. So the focus just isn't on that it's happening now, but that idea that this has been ongoing. You'll notice present perfect progressive has 3 P's, and that can help you remember that you'll need 3 parts to make your verb. We're going to use a present form of have, then the participle been, B-E-E-N, and then the ing form of the verb to make this verb tense. Now, there are 2 forms of have that work in the present tense, so we've got to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we'll use have. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use has. And then the remaining parts of our verb remain the same. Let's take a look at an example sentence. The company has been exploiting its workers for years. Okay. I specifically chose this sentence. I know it's very similar to the present progressive, but again, I want you to pay attention or notice the focus here, or the intent of something like this, is that this action of maybe overworking and undercompensating someone, it started in the past, it's still happening now, and this person might be suggesting unless we do something, it's going to continue happening into the future. So it's different than that first sentence where we're really focused on what's happening now. Let's talk about making a sentence negative in the present perfect progressive. Again, we've got to pay attention to our subject. We're going to either use have not been and then the ing form of the verb, or has not been and the ing form of the verb. Again, we just have to watch what our subject is. So an example of this might be, we haven't been exploiting our own rare earth minerals because it is cheaper to buy them on the open market. This is a statement you might hear from another government leader who's kind of saying, like, we're not mining this particular thing here because it's just cheaper to buy it from somewhere else. Here, the meaning of exploit ties back to that first definition of the verb. Finally, let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, we're going to either start with have or has. Whatever form matches our subject, that subject comes next, then the participle been, and then that ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Has a hacker been exploiting a vulnerability in our system? Well, it's that kind of taking advantage in an unfair way. I know many times this might be used in the plural, but here maybe someone has the suspicion it's just a single person acting alone and trying to gain access maybe to a piece of software or something else. Now we'll move on and we'll talk about some words that are related to our verb exploit. And we're going to start with the noun form of this word. You'll notice the noun exploit has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. When this word gets used as a noun many times, someone is referring to a bold or some kind of daring feat. An example of this. The book documents soldiers' exploits during the Vietnam War. So here, right, we're kind of talking about maybe what bold actions, maybe kind of risky and dangerous things they did to protect themselves or other troops and fight for a cause they believed in. Another related noun you might encounter is exploitation. This noun can be used in a few different ways, and we'll look at 3 of those definitions. One way to use it is to refer to the action or fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. An example of this might be Dolores Huerta fought the exploitation of farm laborers in the 1960s and 1970s. So here we're talking about groups of individuals who worked extremely hard, extremely long hours, got paid very little, were put in dangerous conditions to do this work. And there are a number of leaders who tried to organize and fight for unions to protect these individuals so that kind of these large corporate farms and other businesses were not benefiting from this very difficult and dangerous labor. A second way to use the noun exploitation is to refer to the action of making use of and benefiting from resources. An example of this could be, let's discuss the long-term impacts of the exploitation of coal. Here, coal being something that comes from the earth, a resource, and someone wants to talk about maybe environmental impacts, health impacts to those who've worked, as well as kind of the financial impacts in various communities. Third way to use the noun exploitation is to refer to the fact of making use of some kind of situation to gain an unfair advantage for oneself. An example of this might be, his comments showed a disregard of others' rights and the exploitation of the fear of death. So here, someone maybe has over-exaggerated or just talked about it so much so that's all someone could think of, and they've used that fear to gain some kind of unfair advantage. Now, I've got one more word for us. It's the adjective exploitative. This describes something that is making use of a situation or treating others unfairly in order to gain some kind of advantage or benefit. An example of this might be, the company's exploitative practices may finally be coming to an end. So here, some people, we could use lots of different practices or examples, types of companies that might apply. But as I looked for examples, I did see countless references to describing various social media platforms in this way, in that how they treat or how they market to teenagers in particular, right? They make a lot of money from it, so that's their advantage, that's their benefit. But how the teens are being treated or targeted, many see as unfair and quite damaging. Thanks again to Abdi for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.